Welcome as we begin our day reflecting on the scriptures of the Mass, the celebration of the Eucharist. We read from John's Gospel. Jesus said to his disciples, "This is my commandment, love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friend if you do what I command you. I no longer call you slaves, because a slave does not know what his master is doing. I have called you friends, because I have told you everything I have heard from my Father. It is not you who chose me, but I chose you, and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will remain, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give you. And this is my commandment, to love one another." This is one of these extraordinary passages of Scripture that needs to be reflected upon, I think, time and time again. It's really very changing or pivotal. Jesus says, "I've told you everything the Father has told me. Now I call you my friend. You're not my servant any longer." God doesn't want us to be offering sacrifice in that sense of animals, but rather he wants us to be present to him in relationship. And the relationship is friendship, something that we can as human beings understand. We're created in relationship. We live in relationship. This present circumstance we find ourselves in reminds us of how interdependent we are, that we can't live isolated, at least not for extended periods. And so Jesus's command is rather unique, I think. He says, "You are my friends. I've chosen you. You haven't chosen me." And then unsaid is, if you're going to choose, if you're going to be in relationship with me, then you must go out and love one another. You must bear fruit. That's the only reason that one is in relationship. We learn that in our human experiences. As children growing up, we're rather self-absorbed, self-centered. And our parents are continually trying to tell us to be aware of our responsibilities to others, to share, to be aware, to be understanding, and all of those things that as a kid used to drive me crazy. I'd rather be just concerned about my world. And then as we grow and find ourselves, most of us, committed into a relationship of love and marriage, we start to realize the enormity of the power of love, that it can change me or you. It can be a reason for existence. And when couples have children, I'm sure they become aware then even greater capacity of loving, that you can give life to another human being. And when you do that, that human being is your reason for existence. As we get older, we have to remind ourselves of that, because parents or anyone in relationship can get caught up easy enough in trying to survive, in trying to make our life individually better, sometimes at the expense of others. Sometimes parents work so hard for family, for friends, for home, that they forget the people that are really motivating them. I remember once some young man said to me that one of his sons was a great kid, but he was a nudge, I think the word was, and it would drive the father crazy. And then one of those moments of brilliance that I never understood, I said to him, "Do you think he's your possession, that he should be doing what you want, or is he a gift?" And the father smiled and answered, he said, "I know the answer is gift, but I think I act like he's a possession." You see, we're all gifts to one another. And that's the challenge of the gospel. The gift that is essential to each of us is the gift of God himself in Jesus. He dies on the cross showing us how much he loves us. He chooses us to be his friend. And then he says to us, if you want to be complete and content and purpose-filled human beings, then you must love others. You must learn that. It's where you gain respect and love for yourself. I can't do that without reflecting, without praying, without stopping once in a while and remember. As we get caught in this period of isolation, I would think we have different reactions, not the least of which is one of being very conscious of not being in contact with others as freely as we would like. And that's a burden, and for some people, a really great cross to carry. And yet it also can be the other side of the coin, reminding us constantly of how important people can be and how we not only are dependent upon by others, but that we depend upon others for a sense of fulfillment. I have a personal experience here not too many months ago. I had a sister who was in an assisted living, my blood sister, who was in a retirement facility, a residence. And she wasn't doing well. And she had problems with her mental capacities. She was forgetful. And so there were moments when she wasn't satisfied, she'd be very restless. And it was during one of these periods, just a few months ago, that it was very difficult for her. And one Sunday afternoon, I thought, well, I'll take a run out and visit her. And that ought to make the sun shine in her life after all. But I was also prepared for the possibility of her not being happy, that she might not be happy with me or start asking me to take her out of the home and things of that nature that so many people go through all the time. And while I was going with a sense of love and knowing that it was a responsibility, there was a side of me that said, I hope this is painless. And as I walked down this long hall, my sister was not in her room, but in the sun parlor. And as I got closer, I saw her sitting with her back to me, looking out the window in a recliner wheelchair that she was confined to. And sitting next to her was what I looked from behind like an elderly man. And as I got closer, I realized that it was a former student of mine, that I had taught him in the first class in high school in 1964. And he knew my sister to a certain extent, but he also knew that she was there and having a tough time. And he just came to visit. And she couldn't have been happier. After he left, I said, wasn't that nice of him to come? And my sister said, he always makes me feel so good. When I told the young man that, and he is young, no matter what his age, he just sloughed it off. So often we can just take that for granted, the love, what love can do to us in our life. It can be earth-shaking. It can be life-changing. And we have to be aware of it when it comes to us. And we also have to be aware that we can do that to others, but it's not to our credit particularly. It's the God in us that the other is experiencing. And so the gospel today we need to reflect on in its totality. Jesus calls us friend, not servant. That sounds good. But he then says that I've chosen you, but you haven't chosen me yet today. If you choose me, then you must love. And that can offer an opportunity to be sacrificing, to be sensitive, to be aware, to be more conscious of others than myself. And in doing that, find myself more complete as the human being that God created. He created us to love. He created us to be witnesses to his presence. And that's the challenge today. In some way, in some form, there'll be an opportunity for us to love and perhaps an opportunity for us to be loved. And we really need to be ready for both, because that's where we find God.